gonna go put on her hat.
How are you? Hi.
We even have a chair over here.
Yeah. I know we were talking about that. She's staying in exactly the same place too. Oh, really? Yeah, she was probably getting off the phone when I was at home.
All rise.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is our regular meeting of Council, and I welcome everybody. We had the meeting started at 5:30 just to adjourn it to go into camera, and so we're back now. And we're live streaming, so you should know if you're speaking to us or you're seated in the first few rows that people will see you. And I welcome anyone who's watching at home or wherever. I don't know, do they pick up the feed at the penny farthing? No, but maybe we could talk to them about that. Anyways, welcome everybody, and we have an agenda. I don't think we have to, it hasn't been amended, so we don't have to approve it. And we have the minutes of council for November 4th for adoption, please.
Is November 14th, is that right?
November 14th, yes.
Move approval?
Yes. Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. The next one is committee of the whole on the 21st of November.
Move approval?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. And the last one is the special meeting of council 21st of November.
There's one small change. Should I make that before we move approval?
You could, or you could just make a note of it in these minutes, and then it'll be recorded somewhere.
So I'll move approval.
If it's just a typo,
Seconded.
I don't think it's a problem. Moved and seconded. What's the?
Just there was a term used that we were using, proposed to use blowguns instead of dart guns. So if we just change that to dart.
Okay. Okay. So that's just I think we call that a typo, Ms. Jones. Thank you. So with that typo change, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Thank you very much. Some short remarks. First of all, I should note that our two councillors, one is at home recuperating from a sore back, and the other is participating in the beginning of the mental health conference that's going to formally start tomorrow and run for a couple of days in Victoria, the Before Stage 4 conference, I think it's called. So I have 4 quick items. They are all good news items. The first is to advise you that we got a notice from the UBCM president Murray Krause, who advised us that we are about to get electronic transfer of $406,228.07 as part of the gas tax agreement, the Community Works Fund payment. So that should be here if it's not already. Ms. Carter?
Yes, Your Worship, that's right.
And I should recognize Ms. Carter is here today as the Acting Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you very much. Tanned and relaxed by the looks of it. So we won't be able to do anything about the former, but we can certainly get you tense on the second one. The next item is we had a note from the Office of the Associate Vice President, University of Victoria, just updating us on the scholarship that we have, an Oak Bay and Saanich Centennial Scholarship that's given out annually. They were appreciative. They were just reporting out on that, and I can say that Ray Goyle, who's a University of Victoria third-year student in economics and math, was the recipient of that. He seems to be very busy up at the university, and he's also the recipient of other awards and honors, so he seems like a top-flight student, very deserving of that Oak Bay and Saanich Centennial Scholarship. And speaking of scholarships, we were advised the other day that from the Oak Bay High School, that letter of appreciation informing us that our Oak Bay Municipal Scholarship has been awarded to a grade 12 student described as a fantastic young man who has also earned the prestigious Schuldes scholarships and other awards. Robert Lee will be the recipient, and his teacher refers to him, Robert, affectionately as Halley's Comet, as he is one-of-a-kind scholars, humanitarian, and change makers. And you may not remember, but some years ago, I think 2 years ago, he was featured in the local black press as, let me just get that out so I make sure I quote it properly. The headline was, "Smartest Kids in Canada," and he was one of them. At that time, he was in grade 10, and he scored the highest grade on the Michael Smith Science Challenge, a competition that Robert took, where he took top prize, not only across the province, but across the entire country. And there was a piece about him in the Oak Bay News recently, too, in June of this year, about the Schuldes Leaders Scholarship that he was awarded. So a fine young man, and will be the recipient of this year's Oak Bay Municipal Scholarship. Finally, I'd like to thank the Business Improvement Association, the BIA, for another great light out. There was an amazing turnout given the amount of rain. I know the police and fire department were on hand to help, and I know I saw a number of reserves. I see the chief is here, and I want to bring our thanks to the reserves. It's a great program, and events like this, they are essential. I also saw some Saanich reserves that were backing up ours, and again, we're grateful for their involvement. So a great evening last night, not dampened in the slightest by the rain. And for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you might have seen that I was one of the first to sit on Santa's knee, and I did pass on that long list of priorities that we have as a form of a wish list. He took it all quite seriously. So you will be looking under the tree for see what he brings.
I heard he's still recovering from you sitting on his knee.
Okay, so that's my remarks. We have public participation period up to 20 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker. Come to the microphone, please. State your name, your community. Fill out the little form that's on the lectern, and tell us what it's about. And I start a 3-minute timer. Anyone wish to speak to us? All right. Thank you very much. We next move to the Chief Constable. Welcome, Chief Constable, to our meeting. And there is a provisional budget, the 2017 Oak Bay Police Department budget. We have a report here from the Chief And I also see one of the members, that's the Oak Bay Police Board, is made up of 4 members, one of whom is here, Sandra Waddington. Welcome, Sandra. And myself, I chair. 3 of the members on the board are provincial appointments, and one's a municipal appointment. We worked on the budget with the chief, and it passed the police board recently. And the chief, could you just give us the very high level review of it and where we are generally?
Okay, so you'll find a report in front of you that breaks it down by subcategory. I won't get into the whole bit-by-bit budget. What I can say at the end of the day is our operational budget, we're looking at a 2.09% increase this year. And much of that is based on cost of living increases for things like utilities and equipment and things like that that we have to purchase. But also we take part in a number of integrated units and teams throughout the Greater Victoria area, and those budgets for each of these teams is set by a group of the deputies for the region, and then are approved at the area police chief level. So there are some increases that are seen in those areas as well. So that's also accounts for some of the increase. I must point out that the collective agreement for our police officers expired the end of 2015, and it has not been renegotiated yet. We have not been given notice by the association, which is the union, of intent to negotiate. However, I would anticipate it will be early 2017. So any account that is linked to either salaries or benefits could be impacted by that negotiations, of course. So what you see in front of me, or in front of you today, is the operation budget, and there's also a capital piece to it as well, but this is based on the current salary rates.
Thank you very much, Chief. We have really 2 options. One is to direct our staff to incorporate into our financial plan, which is coming forward next month, or if there's something in particular, sending it back to the police board. You will be aware that we will go through it in greater detail during the estimates in April before giving it final approval. And traditionally, if there's any capital that's required to be expended before that time, it usually comes here for early approval, I think we call it. So let's see if there's any questions on anything in particular about this budget. Yes, Councillor Murdoch to begin with, please. And then Councillor Zalka after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Constable. I just, through you, Chair, a couple of quick questions for you, if you could. The first one, and the larger one, is I just was reading the report, which is very clear and much appreciated. But the one part which speaks in 2 parts. One, there's a reserve for major crime being increased from $20,000 to $80,000. It says to compensate for the homicide being taken out of the SANACH. But it also has an additional amount of $90,000 and change under sundry contracts for that is the major crime unit being that service provider for major crimes, including homicide. So can you explain to me the reason for both the reserve increase and the transfer to the regional?
As you're aware, we have a service agreement with...
Microphone, please, Chief.
There we go, not pushing hard enough. So we have a service agreement with Saanich Police Department. We've had that since 2007. And a portion of that agreement was for homicide investigations. The remainder were for other services like IT and forensics and a myriad of things. So in 2012, the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit was formed, and that would be like IHIT you hear about in the Lower Mainland, which is a joint a group that made up of all police departments that investigate any major crime, primarily homicides and suspicious missing persons type files. So that was created here in the Greater Victoria area about 5 years ago, and it was kind of a interesting scenario because we had this agreement with Saanich, which was $80,000 of our contract. That was an all-in, sort of an insurance policy, if you want to use that term, because a homicide investigation can run in the $1 million, $2 million range if there are significant aspects to it, such as a wiretap and that type of thing. So that was an all-in in which the idea was they could build a reserve, and when the day came, knock on wood, there would be a funding source. Now, we're renewing that contract at the end of this year, and they are no longer interested in carrying that liability because it really was a liability. For the last couple of years, they've simply been paying our portion of the VIMQ contribution on our behalf from money that we provided them. So they actually haven't been able to retain it. So for them, it's a lose proposition. So they're not going to continue the homicide portion of it. Now, I should explain what VIMQ is. So we pay, in the budget, we're going to be paying $90,000 to be a contributor to VIMQ. And other agencies pay much more. Some it's high enough that they can actually provide resources in kind. We don't pay enough into it to do that. What that'll involve is that should we have an investigation that requires that level of investigation, they would supply a team. They would supply all the major case management, the direction of that file, basically Monday to Friday. So extraordinary costs over that, such as wiretaps or undercover operations, long-term surveillance projects, the type of things that can really drive the price up, they don't cover that. That goes back to the jurisdiction in which the crime took place. So we felt, or the board and myself felt, that we need to start building a reserve here because we no longer have that insurance policy with Saanich. So we always did have a small reserve being built for an event that perhaps occurred before our service agreement with Saanich in '07 started, if there was a historical matter that came up. So what the decision was to increase that by $60,000 to $80,000 with the idea that over a series of years that would build to a substantial reserve to protect ourselves against a major event that, like I said, could be in the $1 million to $2 million range. So we always did pay to VIMQ, but it was kind of funneled through Saanich on our behalf. So even though it shows a $90,000 a new item, if you look at our service contract with Saanich, you're going to see that it actually is decreased because that part's been taken out. And the second portion, which is the reserve, is for the purpose of funding something that involves extraordinary costs. So I hope that it's a bit complicated.
If I could just add a little context to it. One of the reasons that 10 years ago, approximately, that Oak Bay entered into an agreement with Saanich was because there had been a murder in the northern part of Oak Bay. We, at that point, hired Saanich on a kind of fee-for-service basis to investigate that particular murder. That cost us somewhere between $1 million and $2 million. I don't know the exact final figure. That came out of reserves. So as a result of that, we entered into a kind of, as the chief calls it, an insurance policy with Saanich. And that insurance policy had two elements wrapped into one. It had the basic homicide service and the extraordinary cost service, all under the umbrella of the $80,000 approximately every year. And the reason Saanich was prepared to go with that is because They took the 80,000, and then for 10 years there was really only one incident that they got involved in, but which wasn't particularly expensive from a policing point of view. But so they essentially banked the 80,000 every year on the expectation that every 15 or 20 years they may have to, access it for particularly the extraordinary services. But when VinQ came in, they don't have that set up. They are not interested in having that set up. We still have to pay for the basic service. They will not cover the extraordinary service, the extras, if you will. And so the police board's view was we would start building up our own reserve, much like Sandage had done. So this is a small part, and we're now going to build up. And it may be at some point when we feel quite comfortable in terms we have enough money in that reserve fund that we would stop paying into it. And that would be the insurance reserve fund for extraordinary costs on a significant homicide. So it was just the way that VIMQ has now kind of been almost mandated for us to be part of, either direct. We were indirectly part of it through Sandage, and now we're going to be directly part of it. So it's an unfortunate set of circumstances for us, but it's just the way police integration is going, not only on the island, but throughout the province. Hope that gives you a little context there.
No, that was good. I think the chief's answer was good, clear. And my understanding through Chair of that is that that fund, the agreement we had with Sandage, that was not technically a reserve. There was no ownership retained of those funds. Once that agreement was dissolved, none of that comes back to us as part of our piece. Is that correct?
That's right. It's insurance premium that is non-refundable.
And my other question, which is for significantly less amount of money, but still significant, is I noticed in the emergency response team portion of the report, there's a 23% increase for Oak Bay, and fully half of that is slated for salary increases, particularly attributed to anticipated increases in training wages under a new collective agreement. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you anything that might compromise any collective agreement or negotiations, but can you explain why that would change so significantly in a 1 year span?
Yes, I guess the easiest way to put it is the training standards for these emergency response teams nationally have increased significantly. And I believe where part of that has come from is in some of the large urban centers, they have full-time teams that train constantly. But what that's done is it's created an operational standard that even part-time teams, which is what we really have here in the Greater Victoria area, is the training requirements still are similar. It's kind of like a professional fire department and a volunteer fire department. The volunteers still have to meet certain standards. So generally across Canada, the standards of training have increased significantly, and that includes the number of days a month that they're required to train it. At one point it was, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was 4 days a month, and I think that's increased. So what goes with that is a lot of that training is done on time off. The member might be on time off. If they're working, then the home unit simply just eats that cost. It's just a salary. But if it's on a day off, then there would be some compensation for the team members. So it's primarily due to an increase in the amount of training that they have to undergo.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Zelka, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Murdoch's question was quite similar to my own, so thank you, Chief Constable, for your answer on that. But I do have a related question, probably directed to Acting CAO, regarding the reserve funds. That's called here Reserve for Old Major Crimes, which apparently is now going to be for extraordinary costs, I understand, related to major crimes. How much is already in the reserve fund in terms of the balance? I see that the suggestion here to increase a 20,000 to 80,000 new increase into it, but how much is sitting there today, please?
Through your worship, there isn't a large amount in that reserve. I don't know the exact amount at this time, but it was set up quite some time ago and has not been used for a number of years. So there are some funds there, but I would have to bring the exact amount to you, but I'm guessing it would be approximately 100,000.
And just so, again, context, and I don't know if you caught it with what the chief was saying, if there is a homicide, or kind of that comes to our attention, comes to the Oak Bay Police's attention that occurred prior to our SANAGE contract, we would be responsible to investigating one of those. I mean, it's unlikely, but there was one that fit that description not that long ago. So we funded that completely out of our operating and reserves. Now, if something comes to light in the time that the SANAGE contract was in place, then the expectation, although subject to lawyers discussing it, is that SANAGE contract would apply, because if it was kind of revealed in that contract period something happened, SANAGE, we would certainly look to SANAGE to go to execute that contract and provide the services. But going forward, we're on our own. Going forward as of January 1st, we're on our own completely.
If I may, follow up, Chair, if I may. So to follow up an additional question, I thank you for that answer. Much appreciated. I believe we're getting a reserve fund report coming forward. Will this be one of the numbers that would be included on that reserve fund report that's coming forward at some future time?
Yes, through your worship, it will.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. My first question was similar to Councillor Murdoch, so thank you for that answer. My other question is just, can you just tell me if we're on track to meet the 2016 budget, or will we have a shortage or an overage? Or
I don't have exact number. We've run 2 positions vacant for a little while now, so I do anticipate that we will probably be under 100,000, somewhere in that ballpark, but I don't have exact figures. We certainly are not going to be over budget this year.
thank you.
Thank you very much. The recommendation is that we approve the provisional budget as presented, and that we instruct our staff to incorporate it into the overall 2017 financial plan.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, please. Go ahead, please. Councillor Murdoch.
I just, my final comment on this, I'm prepared to move this forward. I do find that amount of increase, the 2.09%, given that it's exclusive of any wage and benefit increases, which are going to be significant, to be quite high, because it's very likely to end up in the 5 or 6% range. And it's, it's a fairly significant portion of our overall municipal budget, and certainly appreciate the efforts that have been made by the police board and by the staff to try and keep these costs in line. But it needs to be kept. That work is constantly required, because to my mind, that is a fairly high increase for just operational costs outside of salaries and benefits. It's in line with what many of our partners in the region are seeing, inclusive of salaries and benefits increase on a year-over-year basis. So that's it. Just final comment on that, but certainly appreciate the work that's done to get it to this point.
If I could just comment on that comment, it certainly is open to it would have been open to the police board, and certainly it's open to council to recommend it back to the police board that we don't build up a reserve for the extraordinary costs that could come should there be a homicide. But that, in essence, is rolling the dice. So if we don't have reserves built up, we would have to take it out of general reserves or out of an ongoing budget. So it's cautionary in that sense, where it's quite conservative. We had talked about the possibility of insurance, or possibility of, if it happens, we take it out of some general reserves that come out of the municipal coffers. But so this was kind of a compromise, not too high a reserve, but some that recognizes the risk downstream for a large expenditure. But if it is council's will to recommend back to the board, the police board, that you don't build up the reserve, then that certainly will reduce the budget, but increase the risk. So maybe I can ask Ms. Carter, when do we see the reserve report coming forward? I know it's taken some time and a lot of effort to pull all the strands together.
Your Worship, I'm trying to get that completed before the end of the year for your review.
Because if we find, depending on how much, some of our reserves are earmarked for a fire truck here and parks equipment there. And I think we need to get a sense of what our reserves are on hand, and it may be at that point when we have it, we can turn to the police board and say, well, you don't have to worry about building a reserve. We have general reserves over here that we can always rely on. So that is an option, but I don't think we need to pull that trigger, so to speak, until we get the overall reserves budget. So we have some level of comfort that we are protected in the event of a homicide that has extraordinary costs, and $2 million is not necessarily the limit. If it's a complex, long-term investigation, it can get very expensive. And then if there's a trial that ends after that, that it results in a trial, that's another added expense. So we're on a bit, the police board's in a bit of uncharted territory now that the Sandish doesn't want to have that, accept that insurance premium anymore. And we have to look to how we insure against that risk. And so that's what I think probably by April we will be in a position to know what they are and what the reserves are, and then we can adjust the police budget with the concurrence of the police board. We can make some recommendations if it comes to that. So, just a thought. Thank you. Any further discussion on this issue? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed. So it will be packaged into our 2017 financial plan and then looked at in April. In the meantime, we will have that reserve report, which can also be sent to the police board for consideration, perhaps at its January or February meeting. Ms. Carter, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Ms. Wanington. Item number 8 is the special events application by, let me just, the Castaway Wanderers. There's a recommendation there if we want to approve it with talks about insurance and liability, this type of thing.
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Next special event application. This is firefighters and tree chipping in Fireman's Park. Again, very similar.
Move the recommendation.
Occupation. Thank you. Discussion. Yes, go ahead, please.
I guess through you to, I'm not sure who to ask this question of. Can we just confirm that the firefighters, this action here, the people manning the event, these are all the firefighters through the charitable organization, correct? These are all in personal time, not actively working at the time, and they're not being paid by the municipality at the same time they're doing the event. Is that an accurate summary of the situation here?
Ms. Jones, Mr. Jones?
Your Worship, I'll get that information for Council. Okay. I don't have the details, so
I don't think
it
doesn't affect our approval of it necessarily, but it'd be good to know that for sure. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Thank you. We have the Heritage Commission minutes of the 12th of October. Typically, we receive the information for the minutes for information. We do have our liaison here, and who may be able to answer any questions that arise from the minutes. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, please.
I'm just wondering if Councillor Murdoch actually departed the meeting. It says on page 2 that you departed the meeting, but then it says on page 3 or something that you gave a report. So I'm just confused.
Yeah, in the meeting, I left at 5:24, but we moved my parts up. In fact, the whole agenda was moved around a little bit, so it's hard to understand when you read it, but.
I'll move receipt.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Is there anything you want to draw to our attention as our liaison, Councillor Murdoch?
No, I think the minutes
Okay,
are fairly
thank you.
self-explanatory.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Thank you very much. There's no correspondence on item 11 to be received. We go on to item 12, new business. And anyone have new business? No new business. Councillor Murdoch, you sat in for me at the CRD as I was attending Chief Judge's Access to Justice Committee meeting in Vancouver. Do you have anything to report at the CRD, from the CRD meetings?
I think the one item on the agenda that would be of interest to Council was that the regional growth strategy, which has been obviously being worked on for a number of years now, went through first and second reading with a very close vote to approve it, as recommended by staff. It'll be going out to all councils for approval and feedback. It's a very good chance that it won't be approved by all councils, I think. It may end up going to arbitration, but time will tell. But it'll come to this council soon enough for us to have a look at it.
And there has to be a unanimous approval
That's
for it to
correct.
go forward. Otherwise, there is right in the regional growth legislation, there's provisions for arbitration, which I might add is not inexpensive. That's a double negative. Councillor Zelka, please.
Thank you,
On
Chair.
the issue of the CRD, or?
Question about the CRD.
Oh, yep, go ahead. Yeah,
Yes,
just
with
in case, I
respect
thought
to
it
the
might be other new
regional growth
business.
strategy. I had understood that this was going to be renamed to the Regional Sustainability Strategy. Am I getting this mixed up with another initiative?
Nope.
Uh,
Somewhere along the line, it was reverted back to there. It came forward, you're quite right, as a sustainability strategy, but that was the will of the former cohort of directors. And then this cohort of directors that who've now been in place for 2 years felt that there was just too much dislocation. In fact, there were some people who wanted to go back to the original one almost completely. And this was a compromise, keeping the name and most of the foundation, and just I wouldn't call it tinkering, but just very specific surgical changes to the old regional growth strategy, on the thinking that it would reduce controversy and create a document that everyone could agree to. I don't think that's happened, however, but only time will tell. Anything else from the CRD? Enlightening? No?
No.
Okay. I can just mention that we, coming up this week, there is a consideration at the Committee of the Whole at the CRD about their budget. So we'll be looking at that. And at this point, it seems a fairly minimal increase for residents of Oak Bay. On the proposal is for slightly over $11 increase per average assessed home. So any other verbal reports? Yes, go ahead, please. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a thank you card that was received from the leadership students at Oak Bay High School, and called Georgia and Katie, and it's for the mayor, Councillor Murdoch, Councillor Croft, Councillor Kirby, and myself, and it's to thank us so much for the donations towards the Samaritan Purse Operation Christmas Child shoeboxes that you donated to, and to let us know that they were able to reach their goal of sending 100 boxes to children in different countries less fortunate than ours for their very first Christmas present. So thank you very much to all of you who donated.
Thank you very much. You don't know if they're sent to countries that celebrate Christmas or celebrate some kind of seasonal event around that time anyways, maybe the solstice. Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I was at a meeting this afternoon put on by the University of Victoria Community and Government Relations with respect to the Canada 150 commemorative events that are going to be taking place throughout Victoria. And I think the good news is that the City of Victoria has opened up a website called spirit150victoria.ca, and that logo and link will be able to be provided to all communities to put their events on that are community-related events, so that we'll be able to advertise ours and it'll be known throughout the area. Thank you.
Excellent initiative. Thank you. Anything else? No other new business? All right, we move on to the bylaw. We have a memorandum at item number 13, And then on number 14 is the actual final adoption or final reading, and this is the mayor and councilors' annual indemnity bylaw, which since the late 90s is based on a policy of sticking with the cost of living for Victoria. Now, we have it up for adoption, please.
Move adoption, bylaw 4673, 2017.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed?
Move
And
adjournment.
I see
Second.
we're 7 minutes past 7:30. That means our staff don't have to buy a round of drinks, I guess. We talked ourselves out of a drink here. Anyway, moved to adjourn, seconded, discussion, all in favor, opposed, none opposed. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.